Hey, you ever done the thing where you make a friend in an environment that is not your home turf? You make a friend while you're traveling, on an adventure, at college, while you're on some assignment working away from home for a month or two or whatever. And then at some point you have the opportunity, after living out all of your friendship with this particular friend on their turf, to be like, hey, could I invite you to come and see my world? And for me, my world is the Mountain West. I grew up in Fort Collins, Colorado. My family is from Wyoming and the Black Hills of South Dakota. We're mountain people. We're West people. I love fly fishing. And it's a different world. The air feels different out here. The seasons work different out here than they do, say, back east. And so for me, I went to college in Chicago. I made all of these friends in Chicago. And I remember how gratifying it was to have the opportunity to take some of my friends from there and bring them to the West. Because on some level, I felt like they couldn't totally understand me without seeing me in my environment. I felt like I was a fish out of water in Great Lakes territory, and school was fine. It went great and everything. But man, getting people out this way was so meaningful. Getting friends out here as an adult who have met on the internet and putting a fly rod in their hand and being like, look, this is how you fish with one of these. And look, you go stand in the water just like this. And look, no, not quite like that. Do it like this. And you start pulling fish out and they're like, whoa, that's awesome. And then they figure out how to do it and you have this great time together. There's something that is very meaningful about showing someone you care about you in your native environment, because you know that when they see that, they're going to get you more fully. And there's something very gratifying about seeing a friend in their native environment and understanding them more fully. Likewise, in Matthew 17, I think there's a very special moment happening here in the relationship between Jesus and the three guys who he invited up the mountain to hang out with him for the transfiguration. They have only known him on, to stretch the metaphor a bit, work with me here, someone else's turf. They've only known him on fully human turf. And they've caught little glimpses of his native environment bleeding over into their turf, but it's still very difficult to wrap their brains around who this person is at his essence. And so Jesus shows them his world. He gives them a more complete look at what he's like in his native environment. In the same way I wanted to take people to Colorado and be like, hey, this is my environment and these are my friends and the relationships that make me. So Jesus is like, here's my physical native environment. This is what I look like when I'm not doing the human thing. And also, I want to introduce you to my friends. Maybe you've heard of them. It's Moses and Elijah, except he didn't do this smug, super fancy thing. But this is who Jesus hangs out with. These are relationships that he wanted to put in front of these guys. And so, yes, there's the profound theological element that we looked at last time around, but there's also the profound relational element that we're seeing unfold here. Imagine what this would have been like for the point of view characters as they encounter this. Matthew 17, no, we're going to start in 16:28. Jesus wraps up a whole thing about saying what it takes to really follow him and why it makes sense by saying, I tell you the truth, some who are standing here are not going to taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Very next verse, 17:1. After 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John, the brother of James, and led them up to a high mountain by themselves. There he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. Just then there appeared before them Moses and Elijah talking with Jesus. So look, last time around, we talked about the theological significance of this and the historical significance of this. What does it mean that Moses and Elijah were there in terms of the grand historical theological narrative of the Bible that you and I have put a ton of time into? Just now, we're processing the relational aspect of this transfiguration. Like, hey, this is what I actually look like. This is who I actually hang out with. This is what my environment is. This is the environment that makes me me, though that doesn't totally apply to an immutable God, but you get what I'm doing with the metaphor there. But there's another element that's going on here, and that is the epistemological element for the disciples who got to go on this trip. And by epistemological, I mean the truth element, the knowing element. You think about it, they just went from seeing a whole bunch of evidence that, boom, pops to the surface out of an otherwise mundane reality that looks just like their own. But now the whole thing is flipped, and the natural world is what is the odd man out. The natural world is the exception, and the glory of Jesus and the physical chit-chatty presence of the exalted dead, that is the reality that's right in front of your face, and everything else fades into the background. Now let's just think for a minute about what that would do to your brain. I want to ask you to run a really honest math equation in your brain right now. Whether you are a person of devoted not belief, a person of, I don't know exactly what to make of all of this, but I guess I lean toward not belief, a person of, I don't know exactly what to make of all this, but I'm going to hedge my bets and lean toward belief, a person who would say, I really hope all of this is true, but I still have doubts, or a person who would say, I almost never have any doubts and I am just fully in. No matter who you are, I just want to ask you this question. How would it affect your threshold of belief equation that we're all running all the time if this happened right in front of your face? If you were there at the transfiguration and you saw that thing occur? Well, for me, it would change things tremendously. That would be the moment where my faith becomes sight. That would be the moment where I go from, I used to kind of know a little bit and sort of theologically speculate. But now I've moved from, this isn't really speculation anymore. Like, I don't really know in part. I am seeing in full the reality of who God is, at least as best as I'm able to see it with these mortal eyes. This, for me, right here, is why when I run the 3 time travel tokens exercise to test where my heart and my mind are really at, and I say, all right, George Carlin shows up and he hands me 3 time travel tokens. Why did I say George Carlin? I associate him with being in some kind of time travel movie. Was he in Bill and Ted's? Maybe he was the guy in Bill and Ted's. I don't know. I'm sticking with George Carlin. He shows up and he gives me 3 time travel tokens. And he's like, you can use these on whatever you want, but you don't get a 4th. And no time travel tokening for a 4th time travel token. Where are you going? Well, that reveals the things of the heart, doesn't it? I know 2 of them for sure. And I think I know all 3, but I'm not comfortable with saying the 3rd. I would use 1 to unmake the most hurtful thing I ever said or did and unhurt the heart of people I love. I would use the 2nd to go and warn my brother so I could have him back. That's probably pretty selfish and would ruin all of space-time, but I still think I would use my time travel token on that anyway, and we'd just take a chance. The 3rd thing I would do, and this actually would be priority 1, would be to go see Jesus. I would delve deeply into 1st century Aramaic and Greek so that I was super, super ready before I used the coin. And then I would time travel right to the beginning of Jesus' public ministry. I would be equipped with knowing all the stuff from the Bible, so I would know what to say and how to give the right answers now that I think I can trick Jesus or God. And I would bum around with him, and I would be as much in that inner circle as I could possibly be to see it all myself. And he would know why I was there, and it would make me more Thomas than Thomas. I understand that. I get all of the character flaws that go along with this. But if you want to lay bare my heart, to flip faith to sight because of the incredible frailty and weakness of my faith ability, that's what I would want to do. Flip that thing to sight. Give me hard fact. Let me see Jesus in his glory. I doubt that even if I were there, I'd be allowed to participate based on what I'm reading in the Bible. I think I'm probably coming at that with the wrong attitude. But whatever. I said we were going to do this thing honestly, and I've done this thing honestly. The truth of the matter is, if I were at the Transfiguration, it would dramatically change stuff. And even on my best, most sure faith day ever, seeing this and removing all doubt would take me to a place of asking the question constantly, what the heck am I doing with my life? Why would I do that and not this? Why would not everything I do be about this far greater reality than this one here? And let's just be honest, a lot of times you go to church and that's a pump-up speech. And it's like, well, if you really believe, you'd really get after this. But for some of us, that's kind of horrifying because at that point, that's your everything. No more hedging any bets and no more wrestling with the question and having that consume a bunch of energy. I guess it would just be go, go, go. And I don't even know how it would be go, go, go. Well, I don't think it's weird or surprising at all that 2 of these 3 guys ended up dying violent, horrible, murderous deaths in the pursuit, the single-minded pursuit of Jesus, the God who they saw in his glory to some extent right here, this is what they did with the rest of their lives. They were all in forever, permanently. That's it. Nothing else matters. I am 100% dialed on this thing. And it cost them everything physically. And the Bible teaches that it gained them everything also. John, on the other hand, lived out a very long life, but that long life seems to have been devoted entirely to the God behind this encounter. The bottom line is Jesus had a circle of friends. He seems to have really cared about them. They seem to have really cared about him. They were all from a place, and on the surface, it seemed like he was from that place too. But over time, hanging out together, it became clear that Jesus was from somewhere else and that they weren't really seeing him in his native environment. And so finally, for whatever reason, 3 of them got the opportunity to see him in something that looks more like his native environment, even if it was just a little sliver of his native environment. And it seems to have changed the equation for those 3 guys in such a way that you look back on verses 24 through 27 and all of that stuff about taking up your cross and following me. And what a minute ago might have sounded like a little bit much, suddenly to those 3 is the biggest no-brainer ever. This Jesus is the truest, realest thing ever. Everything we suspected about him and more, it turns out, is true. And they got to see something that settled the faith equation question in a way that you and I don't. And as a result, this profoundly beautiful, theological, historical, narrative, relational event, epistemological event, changed the trajectory of their entire lives and the history of the entire world since. A lot to think about there. More on all of this next time around. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour Podcast. Let's do this again soon.